I am a 28-year-old man who has been married for a few years to my 28-year-old wife, Rachel. We received a newborn boy as our firstborn a few months ago. A few weeks ago, we uploaded some pictures of him to Facebook, which was a grave error. After seeing the pictures, my family sent them to my dad. After my father declined to pay for my college degree, but fully paid for my cousin Nathan's, we lost contact and haven't spoken to each other for about 10 years. The funniest thing was that my dad gave the money to Nathan without even asking. Although I was aware that my dad enjoyed helping his brother, this seemed over the top. In order to put things in perspective, Nathan and I were born within a few months of one another. Despite the fact that we weren't biologically connected, we had always had an odd sibling rivalry. Each of us was vying for my dad's attention. When I was only a few months old, my mother and father got divorced because she wasn't ready to be a mother. My father became a parent by himself. Nathan had both of his parents, but they were too preoccupied with their jobs to give him any attention, so it's possible that he turned to my dad for approval. My uncle and his wife had a struggling cafe, while my dad oversaw sales at a company. My father had to provide them with continual financial support since he could afford it. I never gave it much thought at the time, but I never imagined that my dad may pick them over me. Nathan and I both earned comparable grades in high school, but he fell behind a little because of a few failed math papers. I was thrilled that at the end of the year, I had surpassed him. But there were a lot of disagreements when my dad chose to finance Nathan's college expenses rather than mine. Given his parents' financial difficulties, my dad believed Nathan needed the assistance the more. My dad would not change his mind, no matter how much I protested. I informed my dad that Nathan wasn't my brother, because we weren't linked by blood, and he became upset and instructed me to get out. Without thinking, I moved out and lived with friends. My dad tried to win me back, but he never made the promise to cover my college expenses. I had to quit out because I was unable to secure a student loan or a job that earned enough to pay for housing and tuition. I was trying to pay my rent and utilities while working a low-paying temp job. Thankfully, in the end, my efforts paid off, and I was able to advance within the same organization. Through our jobs, I got to know Rachel, and we are now parents to a kid. Despite not attending college, everything worked out nicely for me. Though I put in a lot more effort than most people my age, I have no regrets. It seems like a tiny win for me to know that Nathan, who also has a family and a job, is not as wealthy as I am. I felt slightly better after hearing from a few people that Nathan's lifestyle isn't as nice as mine. I thought about calling my dad to find out his thoughts on the matter, but I decided not to be petty. Over the years, my dad made an effort to stay in touch by wishing me a happy birthday and happy holidays. I didn't respond because I was waiting on an unfulfilled apology. He never expressed regret for picking Nathan over me, or admitted his error. My dad called me recently, the first time in over 10 years, after I shared a picture of my baby on Facebook. I responded, thinking he would apologize, but he didn't. Instead, he expressed his frustration at not being able to meet his grandchild and at missing out on my wedding. He advised me to put the problems behind me and not give it too much attention. In light of the situation, I thought it was unjust of him to suggest that I was being dramatic. It wasn't like I was a lousy student. I had to drop out of college due to his decision. My dad called, and I told him I wished I had blocked him years ago instead of replying. He didn't regret what he'd done, so I understood he would never say sorry. Ironically, considering his actions, he claimed that I was being unjust. I informed him, in a fit of rage, that Nathan seemed to be his favorite son. I hinted that this partiality may have resulted from an affair between him and my aunt. I continued after that. I urged him to quit wasting my time and go talk to his other son. I hung up on him after that. I believe that was an error. After that, my aunt contacted me instead of my father. I got a text from her saying that what I said wasn't acceptable. She informed me that she wasn't even engaged in this, and that it bothered her that it was being purposefully brought up. It seems that my statement upset all three of them, and they requested an apology from me as it went too far. I haven't responded to her texts yet, mostly because I'm at a loss for words. I don't even know why my father had to inform them about it in the first place, to be perfectly honest. I had a private talk with him about this. There was no reason to engage anybody else. Even though I was angry when I said anything, I was still speaking to him. I didn't intend for it to harm or reach other people. Though I don't really give a damn about how my dad or uncle feel, I do feel bad about hurting my aunt. When we were younger, she was pretty much the only one who didn't treat Nathan and me unfairly. Despite the fact that it was her own son, she was kind to me and didn't always make comparisons. She might have easily set us against each other, just like everyone else did. She was a really sweet lady, and I feel foolish for having wounded her. Additionally, I believe that statement I made about Nathan being my dad's kid was too personal, and I shouldn't have drawn her into it. My wife listened to me talk about it without taking a position. Considering that my aunt had been the only person to treat me well when I was a child, she said that what I had said was really cruel. I know I should apologize, but I genuinely believe that my father should take the most of the blame for opening his big fat mouth when he didn't have to. Is it wrong of me to refer to my cousin as my father's other son? First update. I eventually texted her back after ignoring her for about a week since I didn't know what to say. I stated I was sorry for what I had said, and that I had been hurt by my father's actions. Not intending to hurt her, the words simply kind of fell out of my mouth. Although I shouted it in a moment of rage, I didn't mean to harm her or my uncle. I added that I didn't think my dad would make the extra effort to tell them what I had said. Though I tried to be discreet about it, I wanted my dad to know that I held him equally responsible for the circumstances. If he was intelligent enough to understand what I meant, he would undoubtedly find out since I knew my aunt would inform my father and uncle about the apology. Rachel saw it as the ideal non-apology for my father and the ideal apology for my aunt. To be honest, he shouldn't have needed to apologize because he ought to be aware of my feelings toward him and his actions. It won't change the facts no matter how much he tries to minimize it and make it appear as little and unimportant as he wants. He chose Nathan over me, making me leave college early, never expressing regret or offering an apology. That implied that he was a vile person and that I owed him no explanation. Regarding my uncle, I don't really interact with him. My dad and I didn't get along well, even while I lived with him. My uncle was just as odd and avoidant as my father, but he also put Nathan and me against each other. At least my aunt was friendly to me. They can thus injure each other as much as they desire. I'm not going to apologize to them, therefore it doesn't really matter to me. That's all. I apologize to the one person to whom I genuinely believed I owed one. I won't be talking to anyone else about this. I'll be all right with it, even if she rejects my apologies because I done my part. She can choose to accept it or not at this point. Update 2. After 3 days, my aunt responded to my apologies today. I was on the verge of giving up on her reply. She informed me that although she was fine with it, my father and her husband still wanted me to apologize, since what I said was also hurtful to them. I informed her up front that I didn't really care how my father or uncle felt, so that wasn't going to happen. It was a fairly one-sided affair. I don't care about their feelings since they don't care about mine. She was lovely to me as a child, which is the only reason I even apologized to her. They weren't. I don't think I should apologize to them for that. I learned from my father that we shouldn't apologize, especially if we don't feel sorry about anything. I was simply following him and not saying sorry when I wasn't feeling it. I couldn't act in this way around others and expect them to not be upset with me, my aunt informed me, looking a bit pissed up. I really don't mind whether they're angry with me. I told her again that I didn't really care, figuring it was pretty obvious. They are not now my top priority, so once I done my part, I won't be doing anything more. My wife and my son are the only things that matter to me at the moment. They may cry all they want about it. It won't have an impact on me. I blocked her since I could see she was typing more, and I didn't want to carry on the debate. Rachel believes that this is it, and I sincerely hope that it is. In my opinion, though, I'm sure they'll do all in their power to capitalize on this and turn it into something very special. Update 3. Apparently my suspicions were correct. I'm not sure if that makes me joyful or angry. I was envious of Nathan's preference for him over me, so he wrote a lengthy post on his Facebook page criticizing me for my remarks and claiming that I was insulting his parents. I believe I was quite open about my issues with him from the start, so I don't see why he thought it was going to be this big, startling surprise. I suppose most of our friends were aware of our rivalry because I never disguised my jealousy. Therefore, his intentions with that post weren't truly what he believed they were. He came out and said that he wanted me to apologize to his mother, his father, and my father, who is his uncle. Everything about it was absurd. I almost wrote a whole essay in response to everyone's comments, explaining the true situation, but I changed my mind at the last minute. It wasn't worth the controversy, so I backtracked through my whole statement and said nothing. I was aware that doing this was just what they had requested. They wanted me to react to that post and talk to them so that I would become the center of attention and appear to be the antagonist, even though it was my father who initially provoked me. I made sure they had no chance to make more of a fuss out of almost nothing by ensuring they received no response at all to the post. According to Rachel, my suggestion is the best one, since making comments on that article and other things would just exacerbate the situation. Really, I don't need to justify myself because I have apologized and took the necessary action. Even after that, they are allowed to carry on acting like the victim as long as they avoid involving me. I therefore blocked Nathan. It doesn't matter what he writes about me, because I don't really have many friends in common, and those who know me and my background won't judge me based on his post. To be honest, all that matters to me is that they be aware of the truth. Update 4. He removed his post since my tactic of not replying to it succeeded. I suppose it also helped that in their comments on that post, my friends who were aware of the actual circumstances advised him to remove it unless he wanted them to share my version of events. For them, that wouldn't have looked very good. That may have frightened him a little because he wanted to hold on to the perfect picture of themselves that my dad, his brother, and my aunt had painted at my expense. He then removed the post, but not before sending private messages to each of my pals, warning them that they would go down in history for this. That's a bit theatrical, I have to admit, but I don't think our small quarrel will make any history at all. Thus, he didn't need to send me strange messages and private messages about my pals. Because this family is full of cuckoos, I'm almost ashamed for him, and definitely embarrassed that I'm connected to them. It would have been rather unusual if he had left that post up, and I had not even replied, so I'm simply relieved that he is no longer flaunting his dirty laundry in public. To be honest, all I'm hoping for is that they move on from this now, since I don't want to speak with them or learn about any new antics they've performed. Like I mentioned, I have no patience for their pointless and needless theatrics, and would much rather spend time with my wife and children. 5th update. The previous update was about a month ago. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate you reading my story and getting in touch with me to provide encouragement and best wishes for my family. It means the world to Rachel and me that people who don't even know us are supporting us, so for that, we are incredibly thankful to each and every one of you. I'm glad I wrote here when I was first struggling with the decision of what to do, since it's rather touching. That being said, let me tell you about what occurred. A few days ago, I received an email from my uncle that truly shocked me because of what was in it. Initially, I was taken aback that he had contacted me at all, given our relationship didn't exactly end well. Rachel advised me to at least read the mail as, if they were still in contact with me after all this time, they must have something significant to say. I was on the verge of not even opening it. I read her email because I believed she had a point, and I'm still not quite sure what I read made sense. First of all, it turns out that my aunt and father did have that affair, and Nathan is my dad's legitimate son. That was my correct conclusion, and I detest the fact that it was. Write about it, since that implies a biological connection between Nathan and myself, which is repulsive. All I could think was that at least he and I weren't biological siblings, but now that I think about it, we are, at least partially, and I'll never be able to argue otherwise. Regarding how my uncle found out, it seems that he was trying to have a private conversation with my aunt about what I had said when my father had visited their home all those weeks ago, while my uncle was at the cafe. However, he interrupted them mid-sentence. When my dad was telling my aunt what I had said about Nathan being his other son, he was there. My dad had to repeat that talk since my uncle had overheard some of it. My uncle was getting suspicious of him because of the strange way he was acting about the whole situation. When they both began acting a bit too indignant at what I'd said, and exaggerated it to the point of absurdity, my uncle became even more suspicious. Although he knew that my words were a result of my anger, and that they were not intended to signify anything, the way his brother and wife were responding led him to believe otherwise. Therefore, their own actions were what ultimately exposed their cover. He believed they were going too far. Nathan concluded that something was really strange, and that he wanted to find out why they were asking him to write that message, even after I had apologized. However, he was aware that my father would never be open to discussing this, and he wasn't going to take the chance of informing his wife about it just in case he was mistaken. That's why he did the only thing that came to him. He called my mom to see if she had any information. He had been trying to find her for a few weeks, but it took him some time. She gave him her confirmation on everything. She explained to him that she wasn't ready to have a child in the first place, and that my father's adultery was only a pretext for her to leave when she learned of it. It also clarified how she avoided having to pay child support and the hefty settlement sum. But yes, she told him the truth since it had been a while, and it was now official. My uncle eventually found out about his wife's infidelity and told me all about it in a very hostile and passive-aggressive email, thanking me for being such a jerk. Thus, they are now divorcing. Nathan has broken off all communication with them, and my dad is no longer communicating to any of them. Then he expressed his hope that I might at last find happiness. Guys, you know what? Yes, I am. I'm content at last.